Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Summoner Strategies episode 1 part number 2, where we take a closer look at autopiloting. Now, during the break it was brought to my attention that you could hear a lot of the keyboard clattering from the microphone input, and oh, that is so embarrassing, but I will try to make that not so apparent from now on. But we are still learning here. I am learning about this and you are learning about League of Legends, and that is all good and great. Now, in this next game we are going to see that there are more ways than one to fall prey to autopiloting. Because yes, not paying close attention to what your team is doing can get you killed, can get you to lose the entire game. The problem in the previous game with Cassiopeia was that even though he had a great lead over the enemy, during one point in the game he was truly menacing the enemy team all by himself. He did not really capitalize on that properly in order to make all of his team as equally strong. Now, you may also have noticed that it was not a ranked game, it was just a casual game that I was showing. So in this case I'm going to pick up a true ranked game. Now, here we can see that this is in fact a ranked game between teams STK3 and all missing in action, I presume that spells out. So we can at least presume that all of these players have gotten a couple of games under their belt. They're not complete noobs. Of course, the question is, are you a noob because you're autopiloting, or do you autopiloting because you are a noob? Well, the answer to that is actually both. You are a bad player if you fall to autopiloting, and usually autopiloting means that you're a bad player. It's a bit of a recursive sort of logic there. Now, what we will see in this game is that even though you have a pretty good idea about what is happening in the game, what your teammates are doing and where the enemies are, this is not always enough to save you from autopiloting. Because autopiloting is whenever you simply do not do something based on what you know. More specifically, you may know that your enemy is doing something, but you don't take the proper action against it. And in this game we are going to see something along the lines of how holding the course can be fatal to a game. First off, this is a really actually quite humorous start of the game in the fight in the middle of the map here between the two teams, because both teams believe that they beat the other one to each other's brush and are standing here waiting for the other team to arrive. Purple team is waiting for them to come from here, and blue team, well, the other way around. Blue team is waiting for purple team and purple team is waiting for blue team. And now when purple team returns, it is piecemeal and Riven gets isolated by the blue team, who chase her away. Now there's a bit of this target priority thing, where for a moment they were chasing after Riven, which they probably should not have done because it gave the rest of purple team enough time to start hurting the blue team. Ziggs chases after very nicely, it puts a lot of hurt on them, and blue team has been beaten back for a while. Now, in this game, purple team pretty much stomps blue team all throughout the game, but I do believe that there are things that blue team could have done to alter this situation. Now, the beginning of the game is not all that eventful, so let's just sort of talk more generally about the theme of today's episode. Now, one of the problems that arises when you autopilot is that you have this difficulty of really changing the way you think. You don't really want to do the things that are difficult, such as creating a new strategy on the go. So one of the problems that can occur is that once you have decided what you want to do, in this case Orianna decides, I want to be the solo top lane against Riven. This is going to be a terrible decision for Orianna, but at no point do they make any sort of attempt to change this. Now, at level 2, Riven does this beautiful little gank where she hides from Orianna up here at the Baron, just comes down and picks her up for a very easy kill. Now, if you have ever had trouble laning against Riven, you have to keep in mind that she scales very hard from just pure levels. Her 3-hit combo thing, excuse me. Oh, really sorry about that. Riven's ability Broken Wings, which is a 3-hit combo, does great damage just by being leveling up. She is not very item dependent in order to do a lot of damage early game. Which means that she is a very good pick for a top lane, or a lot of lanes in fact. Or she can be in the jungle, as we can see here. Now, because she can go for defensive items very early on and still do a great amount of damage just by virtue of getting experience and leveling up. Now, at this point, top lane has been pushed quite far, so what Riven does is that she just parks herself in the blue team's jungle and just basically starts killing everything there. And this is already a little indicative of how the game is going, in that purple team has amazing map control to be allowed to do that. And the moment that Orianna steps outside and pushes the lane a bit, Riven just beats her back incredibly with all that damage. And for some reason Orianna seems to return back a bit. She's a bit too brave in this situation. Now we can already see that Riven has 2 levels on Orianna, and this is a quite big deal. Irelia shows up to gank Riven, which is a very good move in this case, because clearly Riven is the more powerful one in this lane. Top lane needs a couple of ganks to get the pressure off from Riven. Katarina stays bottom farming, which is fair enough. Ziggs shows up at top lane, probably to try to gank Orianna, who has been identified as a bit of a weak link at this point, because Riven can pretty much kill her by herself. Now, there was this short chance here where blue team might have been able to kill Ziggs, but I don't really think that would have been possible. Riven responded a bit too late and didn't come to the help, but I still think that Darius probably could have helped Ziggs escape in that situation nonetheless. Now, this is sort of where the problems start to occur for top lane, truly. At this point, they aren't exactly equal in creep score, but they're still passable. It's only about 15 creep score difference, although some of those were jungle kills for Riven, which has given her a great advantage. Now she flashes down and just instantly wipes out Orianna incredibly easily once she has her ultimate. Now at this point, most teams would sort of realize that, oh dear, this Riven is doing great amounts of damage. It's very unlikely that Orianna would be able to sort of fight back against this Riven, because it hasn't happened so far. Riven isn't exactly going to become weaker, and if we look here, Orianna also hasn't really gotten any great defensive or even offensive items up. She's still in the farming phase of the game and not doing very well, so outclassed at the top lane. What probably should happen at this point with a well-coordinated team is they should do a lane switch. Now, you may think that that's a bit rash to say already, but once we watch this game continue a while longer, we're going to see that a lane switch at this point would have been really good for the blue team. Now, down here, the enemy purple team is just horribly harassing blue team. Look at the health of Katarina escaping there, very bad. Now, Ziggs is a great harasser. He does great damage. His attacks are very fast, rather easy to hit, do AoE and just do lots of damage. Irelia wanders into the jungle for no particular reason and gets picked off very easily by the entire enemy team. Very bad decision there. But yes, Darius is sort of acting as the buffer, sort of the support for Ziggs in this case, keeping Katarina and... who else is buffing? Katarina and Irelia from really doing a lot of harassment back against them, because if they do try to dash into Ziggs to do damage there, Darius is just going to hurt them real bad, and Ziggs will probably pile on the damage, and blue team will not really come out of it winning. So already we see that bottom lane is has a very bad matchup there as well. It's essentially 2 melee champions against a really tough melee champion and a ranged champion. While in top lane, Orianna, who has a pretty decent poking game, is paired up against Riven, who quite frankly can shrug it off and has a much harsher trade game. In fact, the trade on top lane right now is that if Orianna pokes at her, Orianna pretty much dies. Now for a while it goes easier here because Darius has gone up. And we can see that this doesn't really bother Orianna all that much. She can lane against Darius, but the moment Riven shows up, yeah, even through the tower she just immediately kills her. Now Irelia and Katarina try to pick up one desperate kill on Darius, but that just doesn't really pay off either. Even Katarina gets picked up by this beautiful lob by Ziggs. It's just wonderful. Now at this point it really is starting to look grim for blue team already, but what have they been doing that is really so bad? What is the autopiloting problem in this game? Again, these are ranked games. This is a ranked game at least. These are not utter noobs. They have a couple of games. They have some idea about what they are doing. They should be able to look at the enemy team and... let's pause this for a moment. In this situation, you should be able to look at, say, Riven and think, what is happening top? Well, I can't farm, because if I go up to farm, I get hit by Riven really hard. So what are the ways to sort of handle Riven in top lane? Well, there are three classic ways, or three go-to answers to how you can defeat Riven in a lane. One is that you can have more sustain than Riven. Orianna does not have this. One is that you can have a really long range creep pushing farm, so that you don't have to get close to Riven. Orianna does not have this early game. She needs to farm up or get some kills to get a lot of AP damage items to be able to do that with the orb. 3. If you have a lot of armor, you can negate the damage that Riven does. Now let's go back into the game and take a look at another wonderful little thing. Here we have Irelia, who is, first of all, has sustain. She has the ultimate that does a lot of lifesteal, and she has the passive that gives her lifesteal on her hits. She is building armor, shoes that give her mobility, shoes that reduce the damage taken. She's building health. In fact, she is going for a the golden heart, I think it's called, maybe? Heart of gold? She's going for a health gold per second item. She is basically going for a starve lane build. It's obvious that Irelia should be the person who goes top to fight Riven, because she's basically building 2 of the 3 ways to counter Riven. Orianna, on the other hand, is building Sapphire Crystal, Ruby Crystal. She's going for the Catalyst. Now, is a Catalyst a good idea to build her? I would say no. No, it's not. Even if you build the Catalyst, Riven here has 3 levels on you, several kills, and is starting to get a lot of damage up there. In fact, Riven is already building a null magic mantle, so even if you got your Rod of Ages right now, she would still probably be able to do hideous damage on you. In fact, she picks up another kill through the turret, almost considers just walking back across its field of view. Just no problem, like a boss. So this is sort of one of the that's just funny. That was just rather humorous. Katarina just walks right into the landmine field and just gets blown up. But yes, the problem here is Irelia is already building to counter Riven and should have been on top lane doing so. Orianna keeps going to the top lane essentially. She sees the altar should be taken and goes for that first, but she started out going top because that is the autopilot response. She starts the game thinking, I'm going to go top. So of course she keeps going top by default, even though she should have taken bot a while ago and switched with Irelia. If they had done that, then Orianna would have been able to poke back at Ziggs, and bottom lane would have been a lot more fair. It would have been a lot better balanced. Not lane switching when you should is a symptom of autopiloting, because lane switching is difficult. It's difficult to start the game thinking, I'm going to do this, and then have to switch. Okay, I have to do this instead. Usually you are very prepared to do this one thing and you set your mind to it already. Now, this team fight is not very surprising. Purple team has this enormous lead of over 7,000 gold and 10 kills. They just pretty much pick up blue team at their own leisure, just in any way they want. It's ridiculous. So, yeah, here we already see what happens when the blue team doesn't really think all that hard about what they should be doing. And it wasn't really all that difficult to see. Orianna started losing top lane against Riven at already from level 1, just immediately lost top lane, was immediately pressured, gave complete map control to the purple team. Riven was farming in the blue team's jungle for over a whole minute uncontested, and blue team just couldn't really do anything about it. Clearly, when you see that happen, when you see that Orianna is not handling top lane, you should start thinking, what can you do to fix this? What can you do to change this? And a lane swap with Irelia would have been the best decision in this case. Now, the rest of this game isn't really all that spectacular. Although we can talk about timing a little bit. If you are as starved for, well, levels as well as gold as Orianna has been this game, continuing going for the Rod of Ages is not the best decision, and she is going for the Rod of Ages. I mean, what else is she going to build? A Banshee's Whale? No. She's going for the Rod of Ages because it's the typical build for Orianna. If she absolutely had to stay top, she probably should have built armor, some kind of armor item first, like maybe even starting with the witch cap, with the chainmail first. That might have worked. Maybe, it's unlikely, but it would have been better than trying to build this item that you usually build when you're going mid against another AP mage. Then the catalyst might work. Actually, then the catalyst very often works. It's a very common item for Orianna. But in this situation, she would have had to change her build. But that is difficult. That requires a lot of thought. That requires you to sort of change what you're doing mid-game. And that's very difficult until you get into this pro mindset and become a really good player. But that is something that you should keep in mind if you want to become a better player. You should always sort of think, why am I building this one item? Is it because it's a good item in 5 versus 5? Is that why I'm building it? Because I always build it in a completely different map? Well, maybe you shouldn't build it on this map anymore. Maybe you should rethink what you are making. That's usually a very good idea. Why Rod of Ages? Do you need the health? Well, in this lane he definitely did. But did you need the mana? Well, not exactly, because he wasn't really getting a lot of opportunities to do harassment against Riven anyway, because any harassment on Riven essentially led to Orianna dying. So the mana wasn't really all that tempting there. Also, usually a good mark to have in mind is that by 15 minutes you want to have your Rod of Age complete, because that gives, first of all, you get the immediate stats from the Rod of Ages, but you also give it time to build up to the full stats that it gets towards the later game. If you take longer than this to build the Rod of Ages, then it just takes a longer while until you start getting the effects of it. And in this case, Riven is already at level 14. That is an incredibly fast leveling. Riven probably will not be discouraged by you just having one Rod of Ages. If you're hoping to sort of lane harass with the Rod of Ages, with the sort of sustain from the catalyst component, with the extra damage that the Rod of Ages gives you, that's fine, but in this case, that train has passed. That ship has sailed. There's really no point in building that anymore. In fact, it wasn't the point to build that at the point that Riven was already beating Orianna. He probably should have built more to sustain it set, or just on the lane switch. That would have been better. Against this team composition, blue team probably should have had more of a farming oriented build. They should have switched the lanes and they should have focused on farming a lot more. Orianna was building the Rod of Ages because it also gives that wonderful bit of AP, and that is really good with the mana when you are harassing against your enemy mid laner. In this case, that just was out of the question the moment we saw that Riven was way too powerful. If she had gone bottom lane, yeah, then that would have worked, but in this case, too many autopiloting problems piling up together, too many things they could have done, lost them the game. That's just sort of how it goes in this game. If you don't think about what you're doing, you're going to lose, you're going to die a lot. Well, I guess this pretty much wraps up the second part of the first episode of Summoner Strategies. I hope you have all gotten something to think about how to improve your gameplay, and we will see you in the next episode.